Good morning, everyone. As soon as we just wait, Honorable Mtetwa is still choosing a seat. So, welcome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Before we start, I would like to, and before we do the formal welcoming and everything, I would like to just say that outside, I understand you have had coffee and breakfast and everything. But while we are busy this morning, if you want to slip out and have a coffee or something, it is outside, and later on we will be taking a break as well. It's a pleasure to have you here this morning. Some of our committee members would possibly join physically. I know there are some of them that are joining virtually, and yeah, it's such a pleasure to welcome you this morning with your courtesy visit from the Kenyan National Assembly and specifically the board of the Independent Police Oversight Authority. I think there's quite a bit that we would be able to discuss. I must then also specifically extend a special welcome to the chairperson of the Oversight Authority and Mr. Isaac, and also then the honourable members, as I said, from the National Assembly. I think we will have the less formal part later on when we have lunch together, and then we can engage a little bit more socially as well. The engagement comes at a time when strengthening democratic policing and public accountability is a shared imperative, I believe, between both of us, and specifically in terms of advancing civilian oversight and police accountability. It's something that I can't emphasize enough, and something that comes up very frequently with the work that we do. As a portfolio committee on police in South Africa, we play a central role in ensuring that the South African Police Service operates in a manner that is transparent, that is constitutionally compliant and aligned to the principles of human rights and justice. You would understand that from our point of view as a portfolio committee, it also includes the oversight of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in South Africa. It includes the oversight of the DPCI or the Hawks in terms of priority crime investigation. It includes the Private Security Regulating Authority, and so too the Civilian Secretariat of Police. We can go into more depth on that a little bit later. Then, in terms of facilitating this initiative today, from the side of the University of Pretoria, and also from APCOF, the African Policing Civilian Oversight Forum, I must also then welcome you this morning, Mr. Sean Tate, who is the director of APCOF, and also then to present a comparative briefing later on this morning in terms of the work from your Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and so to the South African Independent Policing Investigative Directorate. And this will obviously then highlight both the institutional frameworks of the different organizations and the practical lessons that we can learn that are drawn from these different systems. Following the session, we then would like to warmly invite you. Honourable Muela, that's sitting here in front, will do introductions now, but he offered to pay for everyone's lunch today. He is a very generous person, so if you want any additional lunch or anything, drinks tonight, Honourable Muela has been kind enough to offer, as he does every Friday. But no, jokes aside, we then want to invite you to have lunch with us at the Parliamentary Restaurant, where we hope to continue our exchange. So thank you very much and welcome again. Before we start formally, I would like to then invite Mr. Isaac, the chairperson, to introduce and possibly introduce the delegation as well. And then I will hand over to our portfolio committee members and also to Mr. Tate to maybe just do a brief introduction. Mr. Isaac. If I may ask you, just for the sake of audio, when you introduce, you'll see in front of you on the microphone there's a button with a strange face and 3 lines. So just press that.
Okay.
Good morning once more. My name is John Mushiri Nyaga, member of IPOA board and former member of parliament. Thank you.
Anna Jacqueline Were. I serve at the Independent Policing Oversight Authority as an Assistant Director, Investigations.
Good morning. My name is Festus Kinoti. I work at the Independent Policing Oversight Authority as the Deputy Director, Legal Services. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Peter Francis Masara, Member of Parliament, Kenya, National Assembly.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Liz Chelule, County MP and member of the National Assembly, and I sit in the Committee of Administration and Internal Security. Thank you.
Good morning. Sarah Lekoreri is my name. I'm a member of Parliament and a member of the Committee on Administration and Internal Security.
Good morning, honorable members. I'm Susan Maritin, Principal Clerk Assistant in the Kenyan Parliament, National Assembly.
Good morning. My name is Grace Wahu, a Clerk Assistant to the Committee on Administration and Internal Security.
Mr. Chairman, this is a mixed delegation of IPOA board members and also our portfolio committee on internal security and also our desk officer in the Ministry of Finance, Treasury. So it's a good mix of people whom we want to learn together from South Africa. And we want to say our great thanks to Shin. Sean has been very helpful to IPOA. We have been a partner with the APCOP for the last, I think, 10 years. And yesterday we signed a memorandum of understanding. We are going to a partnership. We also had an agreement with IPID as part of our collaboration and partnership and support. The purpose of this visit was to learn from South Africa how you are doing the policing oversight issues, both from IPID perspective and also from Parliament. And we wanted our members of Parliament to also learn together with us the challenges that you have faced, what you have done in terms of getting police oversight in the country. We started our meetings in University of Pretoria, where we had 2 days of training on HR and policing and human rights. After that, we met with the members of the civil society organizations in South Africa on policing and human rights, led by the Lawyers for Human Rights and other civil society organizations. We also met with the IPID and also the Civilian Secretariat for Police. And so, as a leading institution in the policing oversight in Africa, we are coming here just to get to know how you are doing this. We also are looking at the funding for oversight bodies in the country, any legislative reforms that you are working on and which you can maybe advise on us on how to make it better in terms of the policing and especially the right to protest. In Kenya, we're having a big challenge in terms of public order management. You may have heard about the Gen Z protests in Kenya in June last year, where there was a lot of deaths. We are still, as a police oversight authority, We are still investigating those deaths. We have not yet finished. There's a lot of anger, public anger against both the police and also the oversight body for not doing enough. As we continue to prepare for the elections, we foresee more challenges in public order management and how we can therefore ensure the rights of people to assemble, to picket and protest, and at the same time maintaining rule of law in the country. Again, this is all something that South Africa is a leading institution. We are coming to learn, and therefore, Mr. Chairman, we are here as students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. If I may then hand over to this side to just introduce yourselves. If we can start with Honorable Muela.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to the delegation and everyone who's present here. I'm Honorable Muela Mohodu Samuel from the African National Congress. I'm the member of this Portfolio Committee of Police. I also serve in the Portfolio Committee of International Relations and Correctional Service. So I want to take this opportunity on behalf of everyone to welcome you here. We'll also be learning through your oversight independent body that you are operating into looking into policing issues. So we're looking forward for this interaction. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Honorable Julian Leseletse Mkwena. I am a member of Parliament and also serving the Portfolio Committee of Police. I thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairperson Isaac, and the delegation in its entirety. Good morning, Chairperson, and the Portfolio Committee members here present. My name is Eugene Mtetwa. I'm a member, an alternative member in this Portfolio Committee of Police, but I also serve in the Portfolio Committee of Sports, Arts and Culture. Some of you may know me from the group called Trumpis. That's me. That's me. So, yeah, we welcome you with wide open hands. We are indeed expecting a lot from you, to hear from you, to learn from your experiences. In as much as you're expecting much from us, we will share the experiences. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Shongwe. Then Mr. Tate, if you like, just for the sake of our committee members as well.
Thank you. My name is Sean Tate. I'm the director of an organization called APCOF, the African Policing Civilian Oversight Forum. We focus on building police oversight across the continent by offering technical support, doing research, and supporting convenings. We are particularly honored and privileged to be invited to this conversation, and I want to thank you very much, Chair, for extending that invitation to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. We're then going to go straight to the presentation because I believe it will give us a lot of context for discussion. So you would see on the screens that the comparative reflections presentation is on. I then hand over to Mr. Tate to lead us with a presentation, after which we will be able to engage in discussion. Mr. Tate, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. It's a short presentation, as you introduced it, hopefully to set some context and encourage the questions and the debates that will follow. you'll see I've labeled it as a reflection. It's by no means an analysis, but I think what would be particularly useful is to look at a few environments where I think there is much room for exchange and learning. We look at, in the discussion to follow, the issues around institutional independence. We look at investigative powers. We look at the appointment and termination of the contracts of the heads of IPID and IPOA, and we look at issues around financing. And after each of these, there are just a few points that I raise, and this is really just as I was putting this together, I thought might be worth a note and an observation, and hopefully that can elicit further discussion. So we'll go into the presentation now. What I wanted to start with was just to remind us of a set of benchmarks for successful oversight that were developed in 2011. It's an important document developed by the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Killing, Philip Alston, and it follows the unfortunate and terrible events of the post-election violence in Kenya in 2007, and which really gave birth to a new dispensation on policing and introduced into the policing architecture the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and really put, I think, Kenya on the trajectory towards the democratic policing. And so those benchmarks are always useful to think back on and remind ourselves in terms of what constitutes successful oversight. The points are certainly not new to everyone. The Oversight Authority must carry adequate powers to be able to exercise its mandate to carry out comprehensive investigations of police abuses. So that talks to the legislation and the powers invested in the body. They need to be sufficient. Very importantly, it needs to be sufficiently independent from police and government. And as we know from theory around external oversight, we can leave it to the internal structures within the police, but obviously there's a huge confidence exercise in having independent external investigation of this malpractice and to show the seriousness with which these issues are taken. So independence is a really important benchmark. Resourcing is another important benchmark. We cannot set up these organizations to fail. We need to ensure that they are resourced both with the human resource capacity and the skills that are required and the financial resources required to undertake this mandate. They must be able to work transparently and report regularly. And I think, as we see in both IPOA and in IPID, the annual reporting to Parliament, the transparency with which that's done certainly puts us on a good course. And then finally, the importance of having the support of the public, government, and involving civil society in the operations. And we can speak much about this, but political will to support the effectiveness of independent police oversight authorities is critical for the success of the work. It is critical in terms of the necessary compliance with police around the investigation, and for civil society to be engaged and to be able to both see oversight happening, for it to have confidence in terms of reporting complaints, and for it to then be able to take the good news back, because civil society is a really critical communicator in terms of either the successes or failures of independent policing oversight. And finally, the point, just to stress the fact that this needs to be apparent both in law and in fact. It's no good that we have the good law, but in practice, we're being hamstrung by some of the other challenge issues. So I put that up as just a few background remarks, and then go on to the issue of institutional independence. And what I've done is simply compare IPID and IPOA around independence. So the IPID Act clearly provides for the independence of IPID. It states clearly that the Directorate is institutionally and operationally independent. It needs to be impartial and must exercise its powers and perform its functions without fear, failure, prejudice, or undue influence. And so the independence is clearly stipulated in the law, and I think if we look to one of the earlier benchmarks, it's well provided. IPOA is also strongly independent. We see that the IPOA Act states that the authority is not subject to any person, office, or authority in the performance of its functions, so clearly independent in its operations. It shall observe the principle of impartiality and the rules of natural justice in the exercise of its powers and the performance of its functions. It will be accorded assistance and protection as may be necessary to ensure that independence, impartiality, dignity, and effectiveness by every government officer or institution. And no person or body may interfere with the decision-making and functioning of the operations of IPOA. Parliament is expected to ensure that the authority is adequately funded for effective, efficient performance of its functions. So a lot more detail in terms of setting out that foundational principle and legal obligation around independence. And I think if we go to the next slide, obviously an area that's worth and has been the subject of much debate here in South Africa is the fact that independence can be threatened at deeper structural levels where the agency has the same reporting lines as the police force. And again, this is taken from Alston's observations when he wrote the seminal piece. And he says, an external agency would find it difficult in some countries to provide independent oversight in circumstances, especially where, for example, the minister and the chief of police jointly support overly aggressive or militarized policy, tactics, and strategies. And so we just see this clash in terms of policy, tactical, and operational approach when we have those same reporting lines. And I think this tension certainly is evident in the debates in South Africa as well. So if we move on to the next area, and this delves a little bit deeper into operational issues, and we look at investigation power, then we see that on the IPID side, the IPID investigators are provided with full policing powers. And this is important and for the effectiveness of their work. So the Act clearly states that investigator has the powers provided for in the Criminal Procedure Act, which are bestowed on a peace or police official. And these relate to investigation of offences, the ascertainment of bodily features of an accused person, entry and search, seizure and disposal, arrest, execution of warrants, and attendance of the accused person in court. And some of these investigation powers are then also reflected in other pieces of legislation. So we see it in the SAPS Act, allowing the IPID investigators to collect DNA samples, and for uncooperative persons to be subpoenaed to appear before an investigator. In IPOA, the investigation powers are not as clearly described, and so we see they do have the powers to requisition reports, records, and documents, to enter into establishments, to seize and remove any object, to interview and take statements, to summon any person to meet with its staff, to administer oaths, and to summon any serving or retired police officer. They don't have the power for arrest, though. And this becomes quite difficult when you have compliance issues in the investigation of police officers. So I think maybe just some reflection points. the the ability of IPOA to effect arrests, as mentioned, but I think both for IPID and IPOA, in which we consistently bear in mind, is the reliance on police resources and cooperation in investigation. And these often are kind of referred to in terms of ballistics and forensic analysis and support. But I think what we see at a very practical level is the compliance and cooperation of police officers in witness parades, in making suspects available, and in recent research that we've done, even in the quality of the statements being taken. So a statement is taken, it is identified as potentially falling under the IPID mandate, it is referred through to IPID, but the quality of that statement is incredibly problematic in terms of identifying the elements of the crime, but also the contact details of suspects and witnesses. And the impact that this has is that it requires IPID to go back and gain that information, but it also creates a challenge because you then sit with two statements. And this becomes tricky when presenting the dockets to court. So that kind of reliance on police cooperation certainly is at grassroots operational levels as well. And then I think in the investigation powers, what is certainly worth mentioning is the reliance, both by IPOA and IPID, on the role of internal police administrative discipline processes, and on the role of the national prosecuting authorities or the directors of public prosecution. In South Africa, you see quite clearly that a very small portion of cases is successfully prosecuted. Often, and the majority of these cases are either nullied or sent back for further investigation. And it's really at the discretion of the prosecuting authority that this happens. In South Africa, we have a bottleneck in the fact that any prosecution of a police officer needs to go through the provincial head of public prosecution. So it's not simply initiated at the desk. And it's that decision of the provincial head which can either take time or in some instances you would question the reasons why a particular prosecution is not made. And later on we stress that there are critical amendments that are required, I think both in Kenya and in South Africa, around the National Prosecuting Authority Act, of the importance of memoranda of understanding between organizations like IPID, IPOA, and the prosecuting authorities around the passage of cases. And I know in Kenya there have been calls for special courts to be set up and to hear cases involving police officers. But without an effective prosecuting authority, what we do see, and we've referred to it many times, is that there is a de facto impunity developing. So we've got the resources, we've got the cases, but it's not going through to court, and we're not seeing outcomes in court. If we go on to funding models, then I think in both instances what we do see is an independence there. We can question the levels of funding, and certainly we have, in terms of the adequacy. We do see challenges around the extent to which budgets are fully spent, which allows the ability to expropriate increased amounts from Treasury. But in both instances, these funds are appropriated directly from Parliament, and I think that is a very good practice. I think if we look at the next slide, what we do see is the constraint, and that is recognized. I think also we are living in constrained fiscal times. I think everywhere budgets are being pressurized, And the budget cuts that we've seen to IPID has meant a reprioritization of operations and performance targets. What we also see is then that the majority of the budget is obviously then directed towards personnel costs and administrative costs. But what that means is that there's little money available for the investigation, and those investigations do cost money in terms of potentially overtime, fuel costs, access to analysis, and a range of other cost drivers. So the budget and the way in which these are allocated is certainly something that requires very clever and careful thinking going into the future. On governance, I think this is a marked difference between IPID and IPOA. So IPID is a department within the architecture of the South African government and has an executive director who is the accounting officer for that department and obviously is the central point in governance, reporting to Parliament in terms of annual reports, requesting budget which is scrutinized by Parliament, but at an operational level it sits with the executive director. In IPOA's case, governance is in form of a board. This board is then supported by a secretariat, which is led by a chief executive director or chief executive officer, and comprises of a number of persons, but also includes the, you can say, ex officio representation from the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, the Equality Commission, and others to build that more holistic approach to oversight. I think when we look at some of the observations, then IPOA does appear similar in its composition to organizations like the South African Human Rights Commission, where commissioners are serviced by a secretariat. This is not a bad thing because it does provide us with a level of insulation from political interference, where everything is invested in a single person, which is the executive director. You can imagine that there is considerable political pressure on that person from various quarters to be able to fulfill their functions without fear or favor. The board does give an opportunity to deflect some of that. But what we need to bear in mind is that relationships between secretariats and boards can become quite fraught in terms of roles and responsibilities and mandates. And that needs to be clearly defined. Is the board there in terms of governance and fiduciary duties, of policy and structure going forward to be able to motivate for budget and legislation? Or does it dirty its hands in the business of investigations and the operations of investigations? And what we've seen in entities is that when that does happen, it disempowers the secretariats and they don't know who they're reporting to, whether it's the board that's going to tell them what to do or whether it's the executive director what's going to tell them what to do. So those need to be really clearly set out. And I think in IPOA's case, where regulations are imminently due for publication, this is potentially an area where that is addressed. But as a model for perhaps strengthening independence, this is certainly an area that could be considered in the South African instance if we imagine IPID as a Chapter 9, or who knows what the prognosis is for IPID going forward, but it's simply just one of the differences. I think when we look at the appointment procedures, they're quite elaborate. In South Africa, obviously, the appointment procedure relates to the appointment of the executive director. In IPOA, the appointment procedure relates to the appointment of the board. So in South Africa, what happens is the minister appoints a panel to identify suitable candidates, nominates and then submits a name to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. The Parliamentary Portfolio Committee considers this nomination and then either supports it or doesn't. If it's supported, the candidate is then appointed for a non-renewable term of 7 years. There's criteria, and that criteria is includes that the candidate must be a South African citizen, must be fit and proper, must have appropriate qualifications, must carry knowledge of the policing environment with 8 to 10 years of experience, and demonstrate conscientiousness, integrity, and a commitment to human rights. Importantly, any vacancy in the position of an executive director must be filled within 6 months. IPOA's appointment process is similar. There is a selection panel that invites qualified persons to apply. This application is made in the national press of the Republic of Kenya. The selection panel then provides a short list. The president, if he approves the successful candidates, then selects and refers the names through to the National Assembly for approval. And the National Assembly then has opportunity to review and forward the names of what they deem the successful candidates back to the president. The president then has 7 days to approve the nomination of the board members by gazetting that. And the board holds term for 6 years. When we look at removal, in the case of IPID, the grounds for removal may only be because of misconduct, incapacity, or incompetence. On a finding to that effect by the committee of the National Assembly and the adoption by the National Assembly of a resolution calling for that person's removal. The minister may suspend an executive director at any time during those proceedings and processes and must remove the executive director from office on adoption of that resolution by the National Assembly. So it is a process of scrutiny at the level of the National Assembly based on complaint or manifestation of those criteria of misconduct, incapacity, or incompetence. In Kenya's case, the process is somewhat more convoluted. So a member of the board may be removed for a serious violation of the Constitution or any other law, gross misconduct, whether in the performance of their duties or otherwise, physical or mental incapacity to perform functions, incompetence, or bankruptcy. And the process then involves petitioning the Public Service Commission, setting out the facts. Then the Public Service Commission considers that petition, and if 2/3 of the members agree, recommends the removal to the National Assembly. Then the National Assembly considers the petition, and if satisfied, refers the petition to the President. And then on receipt of that, the President then submits a further process through a tribunal to hear and determine the petition and may suspend or terminate the position of a member of the board. So I think for us, it's always that, and we've strongly advocated that there is room to make the appointment of the executive director of IPID more transparent through a process of more open selection and interview with a far stronger role by the Portfolio Committee on Police and the National Assembly in that process. There's a lot of power invested in the executive director of IPID. They hold the functionality and operations of that organization very centrally, and in terms of both transparency, trust, there's obviously much to be said by a more open process, such as that provided for appointment of the head of the National Prosecuting Authority. So this final slide is maybe just some concluding observations. Here maybe it's worth noting that the IPOA mandate is broad, and it includes areas that have been excised from the IPID mandate. Again, we can argue whether this benefits or not, because obviously they come with resource implications. But IPOA has the mandate in terms of inspections and monitoring, and has the mandate to make proactive recommendations to key stakeholders, be it the Parliament or be it the police themselves, around areas that could improve policing practice with the intention of avoiding the risk of abuse. IPID also is following a very criminal justice-centered model where they receive complaints and investigate complaints. There is provision within the IPOA mandate for restorative justice practices. And again, what we see is that this is happening within the IPID environment, but is something that certainly we believe can be much more clearly described so as to guide its application. It is an area that can be incredibly useful in terms of building ourselves towards democratic policing, to encouraging compliance, and but it's also an area that, if not managed well, can create the perceptions of abuse. I think proactive, and then I'll stop at this point, the proactive mandate of IPOA is certainly something that IPID could benefit from. It has an incredible amount of data at its disposal. Its case files, the detail and the nuances of the nature of the offence, where it took place, and has people in the field that are able to provide that information and draw out an analysis and a recommendation going forward. This was excised from the ICD mandate at the time that IPID was established. It was seen as something that was best placed within the Civilian Secretariat of Police. But there are logistical challenges to this in the sense of being able to access those case files, particularly those that are current and running, and then to be able to work together as two organizations to draw out an understanding of what is happening. And we do see patterns and trends happening all over the place, things that require us to just have a look and see what's happening here. I don't want to mention all of them, but I mean, we know what they are. So I think that this is also an area where IPID could learn from IPOA around how these practices are identified, the reports are developed, and these recommendations shared with key stakeholders. So, Mr. Chairperson, I'll stop at this point. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Very, very interesting. What I'm going to do is then open the floor for discussion. If I may remind you, just for the sake that I don't know everyone's names, just say it again, just for us in terms of reference, if there's a specific question or something. I think just for the sake of simplifying it, allow maybe 5 points, and then or questions, that kind of thing, and then we can take it from there. Yeah, if I may then ask, I don't know if Mr. Isaac, if you would like to say something specific before we start, if you've got specific questions or something, or if there are questions from your delegation, and then I will allow the same for our team.
Members? You have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Sarah. From your presentation, I would really want to understand what the independence of IPD is, because to me it appears like it is a directorate. No, if it's a directorate from under the Minister of Police, how can it be independent from the Minister of Police?
Any more?
My name is Liz Chelule. I'm putting up a question concerning the presentation that was done yesterday. It was yesterday by the EPID. What made me happy was the outreach, the plans that the EPID has for the communities, because when it comes to the outreach, it means you are reaching to the people at the community level. I was happy about that, and I wanted to know, how do you reach them? Do you have specific officers in specific areas that covers the whole of South Africa, or how do you do the outreach? And I expected John to speak about the civilian oversight that I think it's there purposely for the interest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think for us, Sean, we think that we listen to IPID and then the civilian secretariat of the police. And I think members were concerned that there appear to be some kind of overlap between and what the civilian does and what IPID does in terms of the mandates. Because we have in Kenya a problem in terms of the internal affairs unit of the police force doing its own investigations. Sometimes IPOA doing an investigation against an officer who has done any criminal misconduct, and then the director of criminal investigation, the CID, also doing his own investigation. So sometimes we have 3 parallel investigations going to the DPP for same offense. And again, so we are trying to cure that by amending the law to make sure that only IPOA has the sole authority to deal with criminal conduct by policemen. But in the case of the civilian, the secretariat and the IPID, there was a little bit of a confusion on our part. Maybe you can also talk about that. When it comes to the funding, there's no guarantee, of course. Both IPO and IPID have the same challenges, and I don't know whether you have any. Does IPID accept donor funding for any of their projects?
Are there any, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Tate first, and then I'm going to come to our delegation for questions, that we don't confuse the two. Mr. Tate?
Thank you, and I hope I can do justice to the questions and the answers. First of all, in terms of the independence of IPID, yes, it falls politically within the line function of the Ministry of Police, but in all other aspects it is independent. So it has its own act, It has its own independent executive director, who is the accounting officer, and it appropriates funds and reports back directly to Parliament. So in that instance, and then insulated by its mandate in terms of it being independent and impartial, it has all the characteristics of being independent. But you can see there are challenge areas because it's reliant on a process initiated through the Minister of Police in terms of the appointment of the executive director. So there are places where you do rub shoulders in terms of how strong that independence is. An alternative would be perhaps to locate IPID under the Ministry of Justice, so that there's just a separation of the two, and police can do what police do, and oversight can do what oversight does. But those are not things that we can really resolve. But it's simply at that point where you see that there are questions that can be asked around independence. IPID does invest much in outreach. It is fortunate to have offices in each of the 9 provinces and in some satellite offices as well. So it does provide for reasonable access for anybody coming in, wanting to know more about IPID, laying a complaint, and then being also able to disseminate its information. One of the problems is that IPID does not have unlimited person power. And so often in these outreach campaigns, it is investigators that are deployed to be able to do that outreach, and that takes them away from investigation work. So, there's a bit of a trade-off in terms of how that happens. Around the relationship between IPID and the Civilian Secretariat, so essentially what has happened is that the ICD was more akin to the IPOA mandate. It did monitoring, inspections, wrote recommendations, and investigations. And in an effort to try and maximize resourcing and budget, what happened was that it was decided, let IPID just do investigations and let the Civilian Secretariat do the monitoring, the inspections, and the writing of reports and recommendations around policy adherence and compliance. So it splits like that. The Civilian Secretariat does not do criminal investigation. They don't put cases forward for prosecution. It is about a monitoring of legislative and policy compliance. We don't have the same levels of duplicity in investigations. I think we're quite clear that if anything falls within the IPID mandate, it is referred to IPID to investigate, and IPID is the single and premier and dedicated entity to investigate. So you don't have an investigation run concurrently by the South African Police Service or any other entity associated with the South African Police Service. You wouldn't have, in South Africa, CID and IAU and IPID running the same investigation. It is simply passed through, and IPID does it and runs with it, and they have priority in terms of that investigation. What happens in the case of administrative transgressions is that it is referred back to the police for administrative sanction, and what happens there is the whole investigation is opened up again. So everything that IPID did in terms of looking at it and saying, yes, there's a case to be answered for, I don't think it's criminal, I think it's administrative. That evidence, everything that has been done is really not used in the police prosecutions. And what happens there is that it then creates enormous delays and is essentially a waste of the IPID resource in having carried out that preliminary investigation and decided on administrative sanction. I'm not sure about the ability of IPID to receive donor funding. I think if there are resources, either in kind or directly, that are received, they are noted in the annual reports, but I would defer to the members of the committee in terms of exactly how that happens. certainly from our own side, is that you don't want to encourage an over-reliance on donor funding because it can be very fickle, as we've seen now, and create huge challenges in terms of service delivery going forward if that funding is suddenly withdrawn on the whim of those that are providing it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. There's one more question there.
Thank you once again. My question relates to the budget. What do they consider when allocating additional money to EPID? Do they do budget implementation oversight to ensure how the budget is being spent? And this reported to the House. Is this reported to the House? Are the reports quarterly or half a year? Does this portfolio committee carry out inspection visits to oversight the work of the EPID? And are their findings linked to the budget they allocate?
If I may, it's very relevant that you're asking that now because we're actually busy heading into that exact process. So we then go through the annual performance plans of the specific institution, and that, along with the budget, is linked. Now, because of the first two budgets not being passed, it took a little bit longer. So usually it would have been earlier in the year. But then we look at specific performance indicators, whether they were met or not, what the challenges are. And we like to think, from what we've seen with the provisional indications of the police budget, for example, our committee pushed very, very hard for example, more resources in terms of detectives in the police. I'm just using that as an example. So there are then ways of us influencing that and then seeing that hopefully more resources are given there. I must just add something of one of the questions asked earlier. We have had, and I think will continue having, the same concern regarding independence in terms of the reporting lines of these bodies, because essentially you currently have one minister for all of these bodies, for both the police and IPOA to report to. I think it could work. It has worked with some cases. At the moment, we've got quite a few matters that have actually remained in a deadlock for quite some time. As Mr. Tate said correctly, it's caused, you said it perfectly earlier, about a certain impunity in certain kinds of offences that have occurred. And it's interesting also to note that when you look at very junior police officials, it's often that action is very quick to be taken. But as soon as it becomes much higher in rank and affiliation with certain persons, it becomes more challenging. So I personally feel that the Chapter 9 angle should be far more considered, should be considered more in terms of it being a more independent body. I also think that just in terms of this budget, and that's relevant to your question, just in terms of the budget, it becomes very difficult when you have to look at one pie, figuratively speaking, and IPOA has to be funded from the same pie, essentially in the broader sense, than the police, because it almost feels like it's all under one umbrella. And I don't personally think it should be considered in that way. IPOA currently have a significant shortage of investigators, and they are under immense pressure to resolve matters. Again, with the budget process, I'm hoping that we will see some improvement. Can I hand over to our committee? Are there specific comments? I've noted Honourable Mtetwa, Honourable Muela. Let me start with Honourable Mtetwa.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still Eugene Mtetwa, and I'm here on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Chair, I want to continuously emphasize this thing of hashtag I'm not a number. Because not a single person deserves to die under circumstances that we see today. And not a single child deserves to be raped by an elderly person. And that is why I say hashtag I'm not a number, so that it is understood that it is not about the statistics. It is about the reality on the ground. Today you see somebody robbed, broad daylight. And instead of the citizenry support, you see people taking videos, live videos. That's how much it shows that the criminals have got no conscience at all anymore. And I'm mentioning this because in the 80s, I used to play keyboards for Lucky Dube. And we came to Malawi. And in Malawi, the security guards at the stadium didn't even carry firearms. And I remember we made it a joke, we were laughing about it, that the security guard, I don't know whether they were part of the military or they were just security, private security guards. They would draw a line in front of the people so that they don't, that line says you can't come closer to the stage. That's how far you can go. And people would really struggle, to try and push those who are pushing from behind to say, no, I can't go across. And that's the level of respect and fear that was there. So I don't know what was the cause of that fear. Because as African countries, we come from a past that has subjected us to such horrible conditions under policing, which was militarized. Now, having said that, I think also it's the reason why post-1994, this country started adapting into a new language. For instance, instead of prison, correctional service, to say we are correcting. We are not subjecting people to death sentence, but we are correcting human beings because there's no scrapyard for human beings. The police, what language? We have the generals, we have all these positions that say we are still a military. we still have this mind, the military mind. Yet we want to bridge the gap between, this is what you spoke about, bridging the gap between police and the civilians, where you have a collaboration between civilians and police. Police on their own, they will not be able to circumvent crime. But it requires participation of civilians also to assist in the fight against crime. Part of that we did, I know for a fact, because I come from the apartheid era. I might not look that old, but I do. We had something called SDU, Self-Defense Unit, whereby when you enter my area, you had to show certain signs. If you're driving a car, you were supposed to set your headlamps on and do certain signals, whether it is an indicator 3 times on your left to say, I am from this area. Because the society, the community on its own, would have dealt with you if it was seen that you are not from here, they would stop you and interrogate you. And that is the active participation of civilians, of citizens, that was there during apartheid because we knew we were on our own. Now, I'm putting this forward to find out because you've asked a question, a very relevant question about the independence. Now, I'll start with my question number 3, which was supposed to be number 3, but because in following to your question, we have this challenge of political allegiance. political allegiance is a reality. We can't run away from it. I often say even animals understand it better. You'll never find a lion attacking another lion or standing with tigers attacking lions. It's only us human beings, especially Africans, who stand with others and attack our own or kill our own. And having said this, it is a reality because you have, let me make an example. You have the Secretary General of the ANC confessing that I knew that he's going to move. Confessing that they protected the former president, Jacob Zuma, on the allegations of Inkandla. This confessing openly. And that's the truth, that's the reality we have. You have the minister, if the minister belongs into a particular political party, would want to have a director coming from, or somebody who is senior, very senior, reporting to him. And some of the cases might also be pulled out because they have certain individuals who belong to a particular political party. I don't know, in your experience, what could be a mitigating a strategy to that, because I'm certainly that lives, that is a reality that we are faced with. We cannot run away from it. If it is a political party that is in charge, a particular political party that is in charge, issues that relate to that political party or people who are found to be against the law in that political party, we'll never see them arrested. The second question is, you spoke about the issue, the delay that is caused by, probably that could be caused by NPA. Now you arrest somebody, and I don't know whether it is constitutionally also, that you cannot keep a suspect for more than 48 hours. Now, how do you deal with the issue of having a suspect for 48, not for more than 48 hours, and then you are waiting for NPA to make a decision whether to prosecute or not? I'll tell you, I participate a lot as a citizen, not as a member of parliament. I participate in trying to find justice for those that are less privileged. You have a case where you have heard over 74 chairpersons, 74 postponements, without trial, without bail. Now, you go into court, you find that the postponements are as a result of one, you find the judge coming in very late, you find the prosecutor is not ready, you find that the investigating officer comes and lies before court. He says, I went to do an alibi. I cannot find the witnesses. That place where the witnesses used to live in, that area has been removed. The squatter camp has been removed. And I went to see the squatter camp is still there. So these are some of the things that are delaying. How do you mitigate these delays? Because police also, I think they're discouraged, in that good police who become discouraged because of the system itself. The delays that they experience, again, if it depends who is arrested, if that person is connected, or is that person willing to pay a certain amount to the prosecutor, to the, I've got a case where I've arrested a bogus advocate who was standing for over 5 years, standing before court and postponing cases. And he says, I need 40,000 because 10,000 is for the judge, 10,000 is for the prosecutor, 10,000 is for the postmortem results, so that they are not brought to the court. And indeed, they were not brought to the court for 4 years. And then the other one is for the judge. Now, in a situation like that, how do we deal with such challenges in terms of delays. And then corruption being a common thread that torns apart structures. And well-meant systems. We've got very good systems and policies. I can tell you that I will not take it away from ANC government, my honorable members.
Start wrapping up, please.
Yeah. But I think what becomes a challenge is the enforcement. The monitoring and evaluation and enforcement is always the missing link in most of these things. We don't look and review whether what we have decided to do does work or not. We continue that as if it is a blank page, a blank check, that we should just operate like that and report. Thanks, Chair. That's my concern in terms of the third question. Thanks.
I was just testing the bell here. Honorable Muela.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings once again to the delegation and the honorable members. Let me try and interact with the presentation with regard to the IPID's mandate. If you can compare it with POA, the POA mandate is a bit broader in terms of their scope of work and how they should handle and manage affairs with regard to policy. But with regard to IPID, the mandate is solemnly to conduct impartial investigations as to alleged criminal offences by members of the South African Police Services and municipal policing thereof. They are in a specific dealing with issues which are in relation to the crimes which are committed by the police personnel, rather than just being broader dealing with policy matters. Because with regard to policing, we've got other directories which deals specifically with certain matters. That's like you mentioned here, Civilian Secretariat for the Police, which deal with certain mandate which are more into dealing with some operations of the proactive policing and so ever. And we also have the police, we've got the Hawks, they all have their different mandates. But with regard to IPID, as they've indicated here on the presentation, you will have one director who deals specifically with the entire operations. But as opposed to POA, we've got a board which is made up of different people with different expertise, which deal solemnly with a lot of issues that they have to compile. Then it took me to another second concern which I'm having with regard to the funding model. As opposed to us, our funding come directly to Parliament and processed and be reported back to Parliament in terms of how they were operating and so forth. And with regard to POA, they said that there is an open brackets for funding, donor funding, which can be coming from any donor, but it must be processed through Secretariat. I think that will be a way of checking the legitimacy of the funding and whatsoever. But my concern with regard to funding, I want to check if that will not affect the independency of the board in terms of operating, because he who feeds you at some point controls you. And we've got such a particular problem in South Africa when we were dealing with the issue of state capture, where there was a thorough investigation in certain matters. So the issue of receiving funding, and at the end of the day, the very same people have to go and investigate. You'll find that the person who is being investigated at some point is the person who funded such particular processes. So the issue of funding vis-a-vis us and them. So I want to check in terms of impartiality. Wouldn't it affect the work of the board if they have to investigate the very same people? We'll understand that the issue of funding might be a problem, but the impartiality and the matter at which that particular funding might have effect in terms of how you should need and deal with impartiality. So I want to also check in terms of to what an extent the oversight agency been instrumental in bringing about improvements in terms of police practices and behavior in our side. When we conduct oversight, we does that most particularly by bringing IPD to come and account on matters that they deal to Parliament. But solemnly, when we have to go and do fiscal oversight, it becomes a bit difficult to deal with the issue of IPD because we solemnly just have to go to their offices and check how they operate and so forth. But you can't get deeply into their investigation and even when they are in operations. Unlike when there is policing, dealing with a particular, reacting to a particular matter or dealing with proactive measures of policing through their investigating or patrolling, night watch or whatsoever processes that they will be indulging on in that particular matter. So I want to check on your side in terms of dealing with the oversight of the whole umbrella mandate that is being compiled inside the mandate of the IPOA. How is that effective if they have to deal with all these particular matters that are interlinked? And how are they actually executing such a mandate of doing an oversight? Then another issue that I want to clarify here, it is with regard to what my fellow said here with regard to the Secretary General of the African National Congress, that the matter that the member is raising here is totally not related to the topic here, because here we're dealing with IPT, which deals with police and all together. And the matter that is referring, the said former president of the African National Congress by then was not charged by any court at some point with regard to the issue of Ngandla. It was just a report which comes from a public protector which made a particular recommendation to deal with the matter. So it is totally irrelevant to say it was on record to say defending matters which might have a particular influence. So I think it should be clear that the matters are not related and is irrelevant to the topic that we're engaging on here today. So also I want to get clarity as to how successful has the agency, has the trend towards external oversight of specific complaints damaged police morale or police operational effectiveness? Because you will understand that, as the chair said here, the IPT is always crying about the capacity of the investigators that are heavy. And they themselves, they also have a problem, because if you can check in terms of the mandate, they're actually looking for someone who has been in the force for more than 8 or so years, who have an experience of policing. And you also have to investigate your own, who we have been working with, who you have been friends with and whatsoever. So I don't know if the IPT cannot be in a position where we'll have to find a way of getting people who have never been involved in the force, who at some point have a particular conflict of interest or interest with regard to these particular matters. I think that is why in the slide they've shown there that in terms of capacity of dealing with cases, apart from the provincial prosecuting, making determination with regard to which cases should be done, but the capacity of investigation on dealing things is very low as compared to the number of cases which have been referred for prosecution. So I think that is also affected by a narrow conflict of interest, which is in relation to this particular operation and the mandate of IPT. So I think for now, that is my my submission with regard to this topic. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mwela. I think I'm going to hand over to Honorable Shunga. I just want to say we can do the Nkandla debate in the National Assembly. We can do a formal debate. Honorable Shongwe.
Sorry, Chair, but his response must not misdirect the answer that I needed.
Thank you, Honorable Mtetwa. Honorable Shongwe.
I was just making that as an example of the political.
100%. Thank you, Honorable Shongwe.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the record, I got a text that my mic was off when I was introducing myself. So again, I'm going to say I'm Honorable Shongwe from Umkhonto Wesizwe Party, and I have been privileged to serve under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma. I'm sure in Africa you are well aware of that well-doing, marvelous-doing president who at once took South Africa where
Thank you, Honorable Shongwe. This is an IPOA discussion.
I'm just introducing
not
myself.
a marketing
Just
exercise.
introducing myself, sir. Just so that you know
Election
who's
is
Jacob
only
Zuma.
next year, Honorable Shongwe. Thank you.
Chair, I would also ask for the privilege that my honorables got of speaking without being stopped. The issue here is that I think let's look at the elephant in the room. It is time that Africa unites. And if you can see how we are driving that mandate, we look at where is the crucial problem. Africa is the most country that has been affected by corruption, which gave birth to crime. This is where the problem is. And now where we find our police are no longer doing police work only, but they're doing two jobs, being a criminal and being a police. I like the question that my honorable asked here, that the reports that states, how do you get them? How do you derive? Where do they derive from? Are they coming from the community down there? And how do you get them? I like that question. Because as we are sitting here, IPD and our police, they don't enjoy the, how should I put this? They don't enjoy the trust from our community. Because many cases have never been seriously solved, where our community complains about the police. I've had an incident of a mother who called me and said his son was fighting with their girlfriend, and then the police shot the son at the back, even shot the son when he was sleeping down. There might be two sides of the story, but IPD is failing to do the investigation properly. They quickly jumped to conclusion. He fought, he came with the firearm, or he came with a knife, stuff like that. So the independence of IPD is crucial and very, very important, that it moves from where it is to a strictly independent department, where it's not controlled by what my friend has said here, that he who feeds you controls you. But now this is where the problem is. I like the fact that my member here touches on a very, very crucial point of Nkandla. I'm not going to debate Nkandla. I'm just going to clarify this thing. That is, where is the common ground? When my leader says here, the point is not relevant, those points share a common relevance here. You see, our police entirely depends on the government that controls it. We have a situation here where we had hawks in South Africa. At one stage, they were said they were controlled and used for political fights, which was true. You tackle the Nkandla issue, you find that the judgment says the president benefited unduly. And that matter was thoroughly investigated. That's the only matter that was thoroughly investigated in South Africa by different entities. They all got to one judgment from the court. Where am I coming with this point? I'm coming to a point where I'm saying, you find that the hand that feeds you in this current state, in South Africa, where our community has totally lost confidence in the police, they're only gaining confidence in the province called KwaZulu-Natal because the commissioner there was called Mkwanazi. He's not playing with criminals. He shoots to kill. Criminals are criminals. And SAPS members, South African police members, who are doing criminal duties, he's on their head. He doesn't mince his word. He's seriously on their head. Now, in our country, when the president doesn't give confidence, you look at the Nkandla issue, well investigated. The president then gave himself to the public and said, investigate me. Instituted a forum there, a committee that investigated it. We have a current issue of a Pala where money was found under the mattress. The head of the country doesn't institute a committee that says, investigate me. So we can't be going to IPID where the problem is in the head. This is where our problem is in South Africa. You find that the hand that feeds has already fed certain political smaller parties with blue lights, with ministers' positions. We currently have a situation where Starlink wants to come to South Africa and it doesn't want to obey the rules of South Africa.
Okay. I'm stopping you now because I know where this is going.
It's not going there. It's not going there. It's coming to the IP. I promise you.
I'm not playing funny.
Okay, I promise you. I promise you, Chair.
No.
I know we always fight, but today I won't fight you.
We're moving with the discussion. Then
Okay,
we're going to
let me
go for
come to
lunch
this.
because keep it relevant. IPID or I cut you off.
This is where the point I'm trying
IPID?
to make. It's IPID. Now,
Stay on IPID. You have now touched on Starlink, Trump. I'm just waiting for you to start with Musk.
Now it's the hand that feeds you. Now that's the problem.
No.
We have a situation where we need.
Thank you.
I'm going to budget of IPID. That's what I'm driving to.
IPID.
Yeah,
got
budget
2
IPID.
minutes.
How do we?
2 minutes.
The member asked, how do we get to fund IPID? Am I right? So I'm going there, but I'm giving them the entirety of South
But
Africa.
you're wasting your own time because you're now on a minute and a half.
When we're speaking, did you stop the time, sir? Yes. Okay, thank you for that. Can you not stop me then?
There's
Let me
another 10
finish.
seconds
Allow
gone
me
now.
just to finish.
1 minute 20.
Are we, as we are talking, we are counting?
Yeah, I can see it here. 110.
As we are talking, as we are
1
extending
minute. Thank you, Honorable Shongwe.
That is how South Africa is. We get to be fed something that is not necessary what we need. If the presidency doesn't change the attitude it gives to its people, the IPID, when we fund the IPID, when we keep the IPID in the same space, we'll never get the confidence of our community and we'll never deliver what it should be delivering on. So I think at this moment, the problem in South Africa is that the hand that feeds has given blue lights to certain small parties, and it will control them for us not to change certain laws. We won't be able to even change IPID from where it sits, because the vote will be a total different. Hence, in the Starlink, and as I said, if we can take that bill to Parliament, it will be passed. But they know it's not what we need. So what we need is IPID to be independent in South Africa. What we need is to have our justice system independent in South Africa. So the hand, the problem in South Africa is the hand. You look at the issue of the police issue that they spoke about in the Oval Office in President Donald Trump office. A sitting minister goes there and speaks political party issues, and no reprimanding is done.
Like you're doing now, Honorable Shongwe.
I'm still going to the IPID, my leader. I'm
No,
trying to say...
20 seconds, Honorable Shongwe. I've now given you extra
Let me finish
time.
my 20 seconds. So, as I drive back, but it's unfair, my leader, because when they spoke about the Nkandla issue, none of them were stopped. And when we spoke political issues, none were stopped. But I'm stopped. And I'm seriously disturbed. Now, have we seen accessibility of IPID in the townships? No. Can people easily go and report the police issues? No, they can't. They feel that if they go to a police station and report that issue, before it goes to IPID, the perpetrator knows that who has already reported them. So the cruciality of this thing is that IPID should be independent. In my second income share, I'll speak in length in political understanding of this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, I'm going to hand to Mr. Isaac in terms of some of the questions. There was one specific question that I forgot to answer earlier regarding the actual oversight there. My colleague touched on it slightly regarding IPID. And one of the, just in terms of visiting, what we've started doing in terms of specific cases, because we aren't able to get depth when we actually go to the offices, we now start the process of asking parliamentary questions and then zooming in on specific matters. So, for example, colleagues from the EFF as well as from the MK party, there was recently a case of a little girl that was allegedly raped in the Eastern Cape. They then requested a special sitting on that specific matter. So then the police would come and have to give feedback on that. And it's the same with IPID. The challenge that we have is that we must always, as a committee, try not to create a precedent. I'm sure you have the same challenge that you can't, it's physically impossible to zoom in on every single matter because it's just purely too many. So we need to decide on that. So we try and zoom in that way, and try and then determine what the policy-related issues are in terms of influencing that, and then seeing how we can ensure that, you know, the transgressions or issues regarding policing or IPID in that specific incident wouldn't happen again to anyone else. I think the one thing, just in terms of whether it's visiting oversight or any other kind of oversight, we must all be careful not to fall into this trend of just submitting reports and then not following up. So there are certain non-negotiable issues that stay on the agenda until resolved. And even if it is only reviewed every 6 months, then that's okay. Something that we've started discussing in the committee that keeps popping up over the last few weeks is the idea of having some kind of an integrated report with regards to, and as an example, organized crime, where we don't just have the police reporting on organized crime or just the Hawks reporting on organized crime, because then the one can say, but the other one didn't bring their side. So now we say maybe we should consider a biannual report that's a joint report that they have to come and present together, because if they then present that, the one can't blame the other. We pull them together. So that I think by doing that, we can have some kind of better, accountability measures over the broader structure. I want to hand to Mr. Isaac. There were a few questions from some of the colleagues regarding the process that IPOA follows. A question that I just want to add is the arresting powers. How do you go about that? How do you navigate that space? Because I can imagine it must feel frustrating sometimes. So, Mr. Isaac, over to you.
I think, okay.
I think I've not spoken, but I was getting some questions and comments from our colleagues from South Africa. But I have some of the overview, things which I've taken which can help us to either to answer the question or to actually improve on how we manage independent police oversight authorities, both in Kenya and in South Africa. One, I'm Peter Francis Masara, Member of Parliament, Kenya, and I sit in the committee both of budget and appropriation and administration and internal security. Actually, on the internal security, this is my 6th year. In the 12th Parliament, I stayed there for 5 years, and in this 13th Parliament, it is my 1st year. The issue of political interference on investigation by police. My take is that as Africans, we need to be patriotic enough after election We don't see ourselves as members of ANC, ODM, Jubilee, or UDA. That way, we will leave the police to do their work, because when crime, there's no crime for ANC, there is no crime for EFF. A crime is a crime. A police officer should be a police officer for Kenyans or for South Africans, so that they can do their work. The moment we politicians, we separate politics and administration, things will work for us. And two, on the issue of donor funding, I agree with the member who said that somebody who feeds you controls you. So there need to be a clear way of funding from external funding. In Kenya, any donor usually identify areas of interest, but it is the National Treasury allocates money to all the departments. In most cases, there are very rare occasions where an external donor fund the entire activity. They usually cost share, maybe at 60-40 or 50-50, so that they can be sort of controlled by the national government. On the issue of 48-hour rule, in Kenya, it is 24, but you seek authority from the court. In Kenya, you must present a suspect in court within 24 hours. These are part of the International Human Rights Convention to help the dignity of humans. So that before that, a suspect were detained in police custody forever without time limits. But with the growing of the democratic space within the issue of human rights, it is 24 hours, but it can take more hours, but it has to be granted by court of law. On the issue also of update by independent policy, in Kenya, I think IPOA will say that, but generally, we agree on the freedom or the access to information. So each body is supposed to update the general public on what they are doing. For example, in Kenya, there was a case which was being investigated by the police. Every step they make, even we who are in South Africa now, we know what is happening in Kenya, that so and so has been arrested because of a specific issue. So that one also helped to build the trust of the public on the work of police. As well on that, in Kenya, there is an implementation committee where those who are being oversight by other committees do a follow-up on how far a resolution has been implemented. I don't know how it is done in South Africa, but in our case, for example, we are here in particularly as members of administration and internal security, where we oversight IPOA in terms of what they do and in terms of allocation of funds, what they use with their fund, and even in terms of budget or absorption. So usually those two areas help the independent police commission to be visible among the members of the public. Another issue which I've picked from members is the issue of when before they were general in police and they are still general. It's a problem in Kenya also. Kenya police service used to be police force, but after the 2010 constitution, it's now a police service. But the only problem is that how the police officers who were employed and trained when it was a police force are still in service. The curriculum of training has not changed much. The name has changed from police force to police service, but the curriculum and the behavior of the officers themselves has not been done well. To me, I've proposed it in several occasions that the retooling of the officers on how they can move from police force to police service
for the benefit of the general public is very important. Very, very important. Because human beings, they work using their brains. And when brain is engineered on how it operates, it has to be changed. Because you'll be called a police service, but you still use force to implement your activities. International standard best practices also need to be borrowed. So as Africans, we have over-relied so much on the Western countries. Kenya has been independent for over 60 years. But we still rely on our colonizers, on how they behave. I don't know, a child who was born 60 years old is a retiree. If we can't learn something from that as Africans, then we are failing. We need to give the colonizers back our country so that they can continue ruling us. Because we need to learn. After 60 years, after 30 years, after so more years, we are not doing things independently. It is important, and I'm in support of the issue of Africa being united and doing our things our way. Even if we are poor, we need to cut our coat according to our size, not over-rely. Why must we do highways if we don't have money? Why must we do SGRs if we don't have money? Let us cut our coat according to our size. But first, we must behave in a way that we protect our citizens, not other communities or other nationalities to come and show us how to do things. We have African Charter. After the United Nations, we have African Charter. What are we doing about it in terms of police activities, development? What we do about it, about education? Because if we can involve the issue of insecurities in our curriculum, at the in the education system, I believe we can reduce instances of crime. And also, even in the police officers, when they are trained all the way from high school to university or whatever they go, about human rights, then they'll know how to operate. It's quite unfortunate that we struggle to get independent, so we carry over the thinking of the struggle, even when we are already independent. It's because I was able to see it. It's also in Kenya. ANC is ANC, FPR is FPR, the Zuma's party, the DA. I'm able to see what is happening in Kenya, also happening in South Africa. But I think political parties should be used as vehicles to get into parliament. When you come into parliament, now you are a member of parliament. You don't belong. Despite the fact of you belong to a particular party, but now you are serving the interests of South Africans, the interests of all Kenyans, because we don't have particular citizens who are ANC. We don't have particular citizens where they are walking outside there without uniform of EFF and ANC. They are all South Africans. So once you are an MP, we need to change tack so that we can work as a team. When a member of a particular party proposes something which can help a country, they need to be supported, all of us, because at the end of the day, the benefit will go to everybody. And then finally, the issue of political goodwill to this independent institution is very important. According to John Maxwell, a leader is somebody who influences. What do you influence? When good things are coming to your people and you don't want to influence because they are not initiated by you, then you don't qualify to be a leader. And let me use the words of the great leader of this country, Nelson Mandela. A leader who shifts goals depending on where he's standing should not be called a leader. When you are sitting among the donors, you want to speak their language. But when you come to your people, you want to speak those people's language, then you don't qualify to be a leader. A leader is somebody.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
You didn't hear me well?
Yeah.
According to Nelson Mandela, and you can...
The leader will sit with the donors, what? What are you saying there?
What I'm saying, a leader should be somebody who is consistent. Yes. You must stand for something. If you stand for change, you should speak the words of change, even if you are with the oppressors or you are in a party. But not that when you are somewhere and the crowd is not friendly, you speak their language. that one you don't qualify to be a leader. I'm a follower of Mandela, and through his deeds, why I joined politics in 1992, because of his struggles. So I usually use his words. So if I'm offended, somebody is not subscribed to Mandela's ideology, you must, for you to be a leader, because we are all leaders, you must be consistent. The moment you lose that track of consistency, you don't qualify to be a leader. But the way I speak this with authority, because I'm a student of leadership, I'm doing my PhD in leadership, and I've done a lot of research about leadership. Successful leaders must be consistent. That is the one. You must be consistent. What you said yesterday when you were in a party drinking is the same thing you are saying when you're in a church, and you are saying it when you're in a political rally. You must stand for something. So until African leaders start standing for something, and we got independence because some of our leaders stood for something for we to get independent. But are we doing the same? And which legacy are we going to leave behind for other people to copy? The younger generation, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh generation, will they really refer to you as an MP for EFF who stood for something, or ANC who stood for something? Because there have been so many MPs, so many CEOs, but is your name written anywhere about something? Thank you. I'm sorry for taking a lot of your time.
That was brilliant. Thank you. Mr. Isaac?
Sorry, yeah. Okay, just to answer some of the questions that were asked on arrest. Okay. Yes, so yes, it is a challenge that we have on the issue of arrest, and it is frustrating, Mr. Chair, as you've noted. So the way we go about it is, first of all, the authority completes the investigation file, which I think here you call it the docket. So once the investigation file is completed and approval is given by the Director of Public Prosecutions for prosecution, what happens is then the Director of Public Prosecution has to instruct the Inspector General of Police to arrest the police officer. So the arrest is done then by the National Police Service. That is one route. The second route is that then the authority has to go to court and seek court summons for the court to then summon the police officer to come to court in order to take plea, because the authority cannot arrest the police officer and bring them to court. So that is a challenge that we have, and currently what we are doing, we've proposed amendments to our act in order for the authority to be granted arrest powers. Thank you.
I just want to mention my name again, John Mushiri Nyaga, a former member of parliament for 10 years, up to 2013 up to 2022, and as a bondi member of IPOA. I've picked what Honorable Chishongwe, yes, and I'm in concurrence in what you have just said, what you have addressed. We have a problem, Chairman, in our countries, but we are not here to sanitize. We are here to see how we can help IPA and IPOA for them to serve the communities. Number one, a lot of interference from the executive, a lot of interference also from the police, and also to an extent, let me say the savior is the judiciary. So we need actually the executive in our countries to support IPOA and IPAND through parliament to see how you can empower IPAND to reach out to the communities, to educate the communities, and to see how they can prosecute. Because when they don't have money, when they are not well funded, they will not be able to do their job. That is what is hearing in IPOA. So we are here with our parliamentarians to compare notes, to see not other things. There are many things, geopolitical, many things happening in our region. Because if we delve into that, if we go into that, we will not be able to discuss some of the things which brought us here. In IPOA, we are underfunded in Kenya, and we are trying to emphasize that those pending cases which are there, they will pile up even to a million if our investigators are 77, your investigators, according to the information we have, is about 180. Sure, 180 investigators, can they be able to serve a population of how many South Africans? 9 provinces. So let us be in black and white. Let us, because what I know in Kenya, IPOA staff are doing a very good job. There is no single case which has been reported to us, any officer compromised or compromising. Up to this moment, we are in office for the last 5 months. This is our 6th month. And even the other board, there is no such a report. So corruption is nil. That is something we need also to address in these institutions. So I don't know with IPAND whether we have got cases reported of corruption, because we need to share this information so that we can be IPID. Sorry, it's correction. You see, IPID. Thank you for that, Commissioner. You have talked passionately. When we are in, we don't talk much about the parties. We don't want to talk much about the parties. But the parties are there. And the parties are there to get the power. But when you are elected, you come with issues from your region, from your party, but sometimes there's a point of convergence where we talk as nationalists. So when we are here, these members of parliament, they don't come from the same party. But they are here, their language is Kenya. When we get there, we will talk about our parties, but we are roping them. Whether you are from the ODM, from the UDA, the ruling party, we want your support. And I will be requesting members of parliament of South Africa to work as one unit, so that they can help IPID. We hear a lot, we love this country. I've been to this country. This is my 6th time. And I've come here to visit. I've been to this Cape Town, a private visit. Other times I've been coming I've come here through Parliament. But the stories we are insecurity, that is, it can destroy this country and the economy of this country. So you need to support IPID, and also you support the police. If there are reforms to be done, let us do it. You do it as one parliament, not through the party lines. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm Joshua. I'm from the National Treasury. And I just want to touch a little bit on the aspect raised by the Honorable Member on funding, especially donor funding. I wanted to just make it clear that in Kenya, we are guided by the laws, the Constitution, and the Public Finance Management Act when it comes to funding. All government institutions, including IPOA, which is a public institution, receive their funding either through the Exchequer, which is the government of Kenya, or from the donor. And because these public institutions are out there doing or carrying out the interests of the public, all monies are considered public money. So before an institution like IPOA gets donor funding, the law is followed in terms of, we have principles of fiscal responsibility, which is anchored in the PFM Act, Section 15, as well as the principles of public money, which is under Article 201 of our Constitution. So any institution that has gone out there and negotiated with a donor for a particular project or for a particular thing, the Cabinet Secretary in charge of finance has to be aware. So the institution has to come with a proposal to the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning. Here we have a department called the External Resources Department, which now scrutinizes the contracts or the deals that they want to get into, the kind of funding, what is it going to do. And once they are satisfied, that's when the financing agreement is signed between the government of Kenya and with the partner. But all this also has to be scrutinized by Parliament. because Parliament is the appropriation body of all public money. So whatever happens, all the monies have to go to Parliament. The committee in charge of internal security will look at the budget proposal from the National Treasury and appropriate the money, present it to the Appropriations Committee, and the Budget Appropriations Committee now will present to the whole House, and the money is appropriated so that the IPOA can use that money, because that money has to come through Exchequer, whether it is donor or GOK. And because it is touching on the Kenyan people, we have to account for it in terms of the Constitution. So at the end of the day, it is not that the institution will go out there, negotiate, use the money, and not be accountable to the people. There's an elaborate process whereby all these monies have to be accounted for. And at the end of the day, financial statements are produced and generated and sent to the National Treasury for scrutiny. And we have an Auditor General, we have the control of budget. These two offices are also independent offices anchored in the Constitution of Kenya. So those independent offices also carry out audit, they produce reports on how that money is spent, and the reports are taken now back to Parliament. There's a Public Accounts Committee, Parliamentary Accounts Committee, which now looks at all those accounts, and if there's any question, IPOA or any other institution that has that deal will be called to answer for the questions. So it's a clear process. So all monies have to be accounted for at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe to Sean, concern from IPD yesterday, where the reporting system from the complaints reporting structure to the police stations. I don't know your comment on this, because in IPOA, members of the public report directly to IPOA, and we have a directorate of complaints within IPOA, so that we receive complaints and prosecute those complaints through the system. But in IPD, I saw that members of the public and the police report to the police stations, so that the police now can report those complaints back to IPD. What is your comment? Don't you think this can be a conflicting matter? Maybe your comment on this. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we have learned also some very good lessons from IPID. I think as the only two civilian authorities in Africa, South Africa and Kenya, we have a lot to learn from each other. And I think looking at the legislation governing IPID, we certainly feel that we can now hopefully get support of Parliament to give our investigators the same powers of arrest, also the same powers of a police officer that IPID also have. But I think that's the one area we can see a reform in. But there's one other issue that I wanted to ask maybe the members. The blue code of silence. Police officers, covering up for each other. It's a common problem. I think even IPD yesterday told us that some of the investigators are even threatened when they're doing high-profile investigations against the police. And how do you deal with that in the context of South African police oversight mechanisms? And just to maybe Sean, to clarify one thing about the parallel investigations in Kenya, the High Court has now issued a judgment, the Constitutional Court, to say that all police matters, criminal conduct against the police officers, IPOA is now going to be the sole authority. But we only want to put it in the law for the avoidance of doubt, and just to make it very clear that it's only IPOA and IPOA alone will have that portfolio. Otherwise, I think, Mr. Chairman, we are very grateful for the interactions that we have had now.
Thank you, Chair. If I just maybe could answer two questions, and the honourable members are more than welcome to add as well. In terms of the reporting lines, Honorable Shongwe said it earlier about the challenge with accessibility to IPID and having a direct line. I think in terms of capacity, that's something that, apart from the infrastructure capacity, it is something that would help a lot, especially with regards to, I think he called it the code of silence, the blue code of silence, and it's exactly that. So I think that is very important. Something that was mentioned, I think, and I speak under correction, I think it was Honorable Muela last year, at the end of last year, and it was more specifically referring to the Civilian Secretariat, but relevance to IPID is doing more aggressive, in a figurative sense, marketing about the actual body and what they do, because a lot of people don't understand it. They see the police as being one big body with different departments, but the police is the police. And calling it independent and saying it's IPID here and there in Parliament, to the general public very often, I don't think we've always done enough to communicate the difference and the role that it can play. So physical marketing, especially in rural communities that you know don't always have access or easier access to these types of institutions, it's critical, I think, to spend time with that. In terms of the intimidation side, it's a massive problem across the board. I can tell you that, and it ranges to where even military police would get involved. So you have military police issue, and although not falling under the same body, there is a sort of a link, and we have a case at the moment, and we actually have several of them over the last few years with VIP protection officers, and how they over the years have been seen to be involved in different contraventions publicly. I remember, I think it was, the members can correct me, I think it was in 2012 or 13, a young boy was bumped off of his motorcycle by one of these VIP convoys. And to this day, no real prosecution took place or anything. And very often it happens that cases are either withdrawn or go cold because of intimidation. In our opinion, and I think what the committee does well, is that everyone on the committee, we generally speaking, when we speak with the police or with whether it's IPID, it's a brutally honest environment. Obviously, we keep it as respectful as possible, but we try to bring facts to the table and then say it as it is. And I think the more open we communicate about these things, the more it decreases the chances for intimidation. So we need to be open and public about it. Yeah, I don't know if the members would like to add anything about that. We can add more. Just one last one in terms of reporting lines, and it's a question to you as well, is that IPID sometimes make recommendations in terms of disciplinary processes as well. And what we've seen inside the police this past week is a good example. In the committee, we discussed several police officers that have been either arrested, they are currently out on bail, but they're back at the station working in that environment. And for serious issues, I mean, it includes rape. We've got another one that was arrested for being in possession of almost 1,000 Mandrax pills. So it's a whole list of things. And if it were purely up to IPID, I think there would be more action. So that's where we are. We have a bit of a challenge at the moment.
Don't get interdicted?
No, so some of them, it's very interesting because you see some cases. We had a case where an officer said that he mistakenly sent pornographic material on a cell phone to someone, and he was dismissed overnight. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was very quick, dismissed, gone. But then with these types of transgressions, not always the case. And the unions, some unions play a role as well, that make it quite challenging. Colleagues, I think we have more time to engage over lunch. We have, I think, delved into it quite a bit, and I want to thank Mr. Tate again for your input. In the absence of Honourable Mtetwa and Mkwena, also thank Honourable Shongwe, Honourable Muela as well. And then a very special thank you to you, Mr. Chair, and your whole delegation. I actually hope that we should actually do this annually, and have this discussion. Honourable Muela already said that he'll sponsor the lunch next year as well, so we're sorted with that. And yeah, just want to thank you. We have a few small tokens that we would just like to give you in terms of just appreciation, and then we are going to go and enjoy lunch at the Old Assembly restaurant. Thank you.